are great books, not so great books, and lousy books. If you write what people want to read, you'll keep a language and you'll keep the book alive. If you write something about vampires in Spanish, it might be a good move right now.
And just on the issue that he was raising, that bookstores are disappearing in Miami and in Puerto Rico too. So it's not only a phenomenon of New York. So that's why I think it's a broader trend that's beyond New York.
Good evening. With the whole lack of employment and the anti-immigration sentiment that certain that states and municipalities are passing, and also with the rise in hate crimes within the city, especially. Can you please explain why Latinos are still coming to this country? And then also, like, it's supposed to increase, 30%. And as well, some of you had touched on the point within the whole different perceptions, how Latinos are being seen within the United States. Can you also touch on like discrepancies, particularly with the hate crimes going on, directed towards the Latino community, more so, like to the Mexican community in general?
Well, immigrants are resilient, no? And it's not just the history of Latinos, it's the history of immigration. There is a professor here at Columbia, Jose Moya, who's an expert in immigration, which has written an essay by him precisely entitled A Continent of Immigrants, referring to the 3 or 2 Americas, the Americas. Immigrants go where the opportunities are. So, and they face and they challenge every kind of dangers and risks because they look forward to being better in the future. So, I think that's a short answer, but it's probably the only answer you can give. Why people keep going, they go because they still think it's worth it to do, the effort to do that.
But also, immigration is something that once begun doesn't really stop unless there's something that puts a damp. It's like even when economic downturn occurs, immigration still continues. It can be a little less, but it still continues. Mm-hmm. And part of that is because once immigrant networks are created, they're available and people are going to make use of them, even if conditions are not that favorable. So in that regard, that there are hate crimes doesn't necessarily stop or there's economic downturn in the U.S. doesn't stop the flow of communication and movement that has begun. So I think in that regard, unless there's something very radical that takes place, you can count on that process of migration from multiple locations is going to continue. Not only to the United States. If you look at what's going on in Europe, you have a similar situation, and then even on the French, which is the country that has the most immigrants in Europe, and they only have like 7% of the population, and they're going bonkers. They have a way to go, but you can see that these questions are being asked in multiple places of the world because once those circuits are in movement, they're very difficult to stop.
Although it's important to mention also that there was a peak of immigration from Latin America about 3 years ago, and after the recession, the explosion of the recession in 2007, it started to decline. So we have Angelo Falcon here who can give us more precision on that. But basically, now it's more or less stabilized, but there's been a decline in immigration, but due to related apparently to the economic downturn.
But also depends from where, because it has increased from Puerto Rico.
Well, because
in fact, Puerto Rico lost population over the last 10 years, and part of it is that an increased migration to the United States. So it's decreased from Mexico because of the downturn, the Arizona, the signs are up there, but it actually increased from Puerto Rico, so we'd have to,
And in the case of Mexico, this Mixteca Alta region, the states of Guerrero, Puebla, and Oaxaca, this is a region that's been hit extremely hard for decades. All kinds of economic problems. The agricultural system of smallholders has been pretty much wrecked. The region has gone through lengthy periods of droughts. And so people coming from this region are really quite desperate, right? And even though that border crossing into Arizona or New Mexico might be fraught with danger, young people who see no future in their home country they're going to make that journey. They're going to try to make that journey to get here, regardless.
There is a phenomenon, a tragic thing going on between in El Canal de la Mona. The Canal de la Mona is what divides the Dominican Republic from Puerto Rico. And people get into a yola, a very fragile embarkation, to go to Puerto Rico. Some of them come here to New York. So it's not like people are coming, it's the way they're coming here. And there is only one reason to explain that. Probably there are many other reasons, but I believe the main reason is poverty. It's poverty. People have to run away from poverty. They have to look for opportunity. They have to feed their children. And there is no that. You know, like you remember the Mariel from Cuba? If you put a boat in the port of Santo Domingo, it's going to bring more people than the Mariel brought Cuban here to the United States. Even if you said that people are being killed in the street.
And that's even in the face of the Dominican Republic being praised as a relative economic success story. Seriously, it's had very strong gross domestic product and per capita GDP growth over the last 20 years. It has a per capita GDP that's 6 to 7 times that of its next door neighbor, Haiti. But people are still willing to get in those boats and try to get to Mayagüez. And that's why every Puerto Rican had to get a new birth certificate. Seriously. Yes.
Hello, and I don't know, can you hear me? First, congratulations, Claudio, amazing. Thank you for this. But it's a discussion that I've had with Claudio before, and I wanted to address. There's a renaissance of sorts happening in the cultural communities in New York City. You know, as a writer myself and as a performer and a poet, you see it everywhere you go in New York. Like you go down to New York, and I mean, it's been happening for a while now, but it's like boiling over. You know, the cauldron is boiling over, and I would like just to hear how do you think these past migrations and what's going on now, how that's affecting the Renaissance, and why you think it's happening?
Well, as you know, I publish a blog where we have weekly listings of cultural events happening in New York and New Jersey also, neighborhood. And in the heavy season, right? Like now in the fall, we have like, I don't know, 20 different events happening on one single week. And I think that when I first came to New York, there were a number of institutions, and then of course there was the Nuyorican tradition and the Nuyorican Poets Cafe and different groups, and then there were the established, more highbrow institutions. But what had happened in the past, I think it happened throughout this decade, with the increasing the arrival of people, young writers from Colombia. There is a couple here from Ecuador, from everywhere. It's a different kind of migration than the one that was already established here. It's a different kind of writers than the typical or traditional Nuyorican writers that, of course, keep growing. And you have, Charlie Vasquez over there too. I mean, there's a number of people who represent new trends, new things that haven't really. It's true. I mean, especially in the literary scene, New York, the Latino New York is a very hot place right now, and many things are happening from the grassroots. And a lot of that has to do with immigration, with, as I said, new people coming, and the need to create and recreate. And this has been happening in New York throughout ever. One of the articles in the book by Ignacio Cañas, History of Literature and the Arts in New York, describes the same scene 100 years ago. This has been happening forever. But I think the difference now is that we have you have the mass media, we have, shows, programs, we have like NY1 Noticias in Spanish, and besides a good friend there, Juan Manuel Benitez, who, by the way, has a terrific political show. There is also Simian from Chile, an immigrant from Chile, who runs a show on literature and arts. And this is